Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Welcome everybody to the very first Unpacked with Zay episode where we're unpacking things people have never told anybody. Conversations that some people may always want to have, conversations you may have with yourself, conversations and things you may want to share but never got the opportunity to. This is the space where we're allowing that for everybody. We're bringing all types of people, people with stories, people with things they went to get to the point where they're at. Today, since this is the very first episode, this is a very special episode, not only because it's the first, but this person he's been in my life since my freshman year of high school. He's seen my ups and downs. He's seen me at some of the darkest moments in my life, and he's always been there for me. And I'm able to see his growth in not only myself. So with being the first episode, why not give him the space? He's somebody that's been through three schools. He's taken a gap year. He's found passion in a lot of things he's loved. He a diehard Real Madrid fan that which sucks to say, but he's somebody that I almost look up to. He's very passionate about the game of soccer, football, as you may say, and he's just somebody that I'm always proud of to be able to call my best friend. With further doubt, bring in Mr. Jordan Vite. Welcome, bro.
What's up, bro? How you
What's
doing?
going on? No, you can go ahead and introduce yourself. I've already given a brief background about yourself, but what do you want to tell the people going into this?
What's good, everybody? My name is Jordan. Obviously, Zay already introduced myself to all of you. Zay, thanks for having me. I appreciate you for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it. So, so yeah, just thanks for having me, man. That's all I have
We
to say.
thank you. We
Thanks for
thank you
having
for being here. So one of the very first questions and one of the very first things we went over was, you're a transfer student, a third time transfer student, or a second time, however you may want to look at it. So what through these transfers, what kept you hungry and passionate? Each school you had the ability to play soccer at, and what's kept you passionate through going through each year?
me. I think it's just my love for the game. Obviously, transferring three times, having to deal with the transfer process more than once. It's not an easy process because you gotta, especially as an athlete, like you always at the back of your head, you're like, okay, am I gonna get to play? Because you have to make that self-conscious decision. Are you gonna
Mhm.
transfer? So when I made the decision to transfer the first time, I um it was just because an opportunity presented itself. And now unfortunately the school that I attended closed down. So this was a transfer that had to be done. But honestly, I'm still appreciative of the opportunity that Coach Wolf gave me. Shout out Coach Wolf, Bethany College. That's where I will be playing this fall, going to school in West Virginia. So,
Okay.
but I mean, it's just the love for the game. That's all. It's a pretty cliche answer, but it's the love for the game.
Okay. And going into that, what do you think your hardest year has been like? Obviously, you haven't gone into what would now be your junior year on paper. Would you say your freshman year, sophomore year, even, the gap year was the hardest year for you, just trying to stay passionate and just in life in general?
I would say a little bit at the beginning of freshman year. I mean, everyone experiences having a little bit of struggle during the beginning of their freshman year. I mean, I know you can relate. I mean,
No, I can't.
we've been friends for a long time, and we kind of went through it together. But I would say the gap year, that little gap I took, you know how that really affected me just because of the
Yeah.
situation I was in, the financial situation I was in, where I had to take a gap semester, not necessarily a gap year, a gap semester because my mom couldn't handle the financial responsibility of me being in school. So I would say it was a pretty hard time to navigate through life because it was like I had a plan, but then my heart was still set on playing college athletics and getting my degree. So I think that was definitely a time period of my life where it was just really hard to navigate through. And, I just had the right people around me to navigate me through that tough time, and I was able to get through it, and here I am today.
Okay. Yeah, like you said, freshman year, we both, were the backbone of each other to even get to the point where we had to keep playing. Everybody, I feel, goes through something, and we also had the ability to lean on each other to get through that. So that was also, for us to get through.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a moment, we just spoke about it. Did you ever have a moment where, you wanted to quit? Obviously, we went through my little spurt of me wanting to quit very early, but did you have a moment in these over these 2.5 years, 3 years that made you want to quit? And why may that have been? And what made you keep going and wanted to stay hungry and so passionate about the game?
Mm, I don't think I ever came to the point where I wanted to quit. I mean, I did reach that point of my life where I was like, okay, maybe it's time to put football to the side and just but you actually dug me out that hole our senior year of high school where I was thinking about hanging up the boots
It's
and just
throwback.
focusing on getting finishing out high school and then going to college, just getting my degree. But you and Ben talked me out of it actually. It's fun.
Mhm.
That's funny. We're going way back. But I mean, other than that, I would say that no, I really haven't had the thought of quitting. That thought has never pressured me, but I mean, obviously the challenges of being a first time, just being a freshman, we're touching back on the fact that, going into college, being a freshman, I think that's probably where I can say something like that, something along the lines of quitting came about, just, transitioning into the college game, the level of play, playing time, because, me and you were starters all of our senior year of high school, we started every single game. So for me, I know you can relate, for me and you to both go to college, for us to go to college and for us not to start a game, it was just kind of like it messes with your mental a little.
Yeah,
It's like we started all of our games this
it's a
past season.
big eye opener.
And now we're sitting on the bench watching the starting 11 be called. They're getting their names called, and that was just us like a couple months ago. So I
Yeah.
would it was probably around that time, and I mean, good came out of it. I mean, a lot of good came out of it. I improved from freshman to sophomore year in a lot of aspects. And I think we both improved because we worked together that summer going into our sophomore year. We worked
Hmm.
hard actually, now that I remember.
Yeah.
So I think that was pretty much that was a time where quitting was kind like something along the lines of quitting just hit hard.
Okay, yeah, I feel you. I mean, yeah, Ben, shout out Ben, kicker at Hampton University now.
Yeah.
We had our great group chat, CKB, which was fantastic. And,
Wow.
I mean, freshman year, for both of us, that was real big eye opener, going from, like you said, starting every game. You knew your name was on the stat sheet the week before, and then coming into college you're not even getting any minutes. So, that was a big eye opener. But it was also, everybody has a different journey and, it allowed us to be grateful for even where we're at because some people don't even get that opportunity. So that was fantastic.
Hmm.
Um, Real Madrid, since we're on the topic of soccer and, passionate, Real Madrid, why are you so passionate for a Real Madrid fan? I see the jersey collection in the back. We'll dive into that in a second, but why Real Madrid and who would you say is a player that you're most connected to, like, that you looked up to and kind of not modeled yourself after on the field, but like also off the field because we don't our favorite players aren't just who they are on the field, it's who they are, how they carry themselves off. So talk about the team and who that player for Real Madrid may be. As much as I hate saying this team though.
Wow. Why Real Madrid? That's always the question. That's always the first question thrown at Madrid fans, us Madrid fans. Just growing up, I mean, my dad, he's a fan of Mexican League team, but growing up, I used to watch my dad play FIFA, and him and my uncles would bet on FIFA games. Like I'm talking $100 a person. So the winner of the FIFA tournament would win probably about 300, $400 a sitting at every tournament. So my dad used to use Real Madrid all the time, and I was like, "Dad, are you a Madrid fan?" He was like, "Oh, I mean, if there's a team I have to support, I have to choose. Sometimes I'll choose Madrid." So at that point in time, I started to look into it, and okay, let me look more into this Real Madrid, club. And as time went on, and my love grew for the game, my love just grew for the club. All these spectacular players, just looking back to the early 2000s, the Galacticos, Zidane, Beckham, R9. I mean, Roberto Carlos, just all of the seeing all those players, watching their highlights, just really pushed me towards Madrid more. And then when I started to finally grow a little more and, you know, gain a little bit of more common sense, and I could actually start watching games, I just started watching Real Madrid, and then from then on, it just the love grew. Madrid's a
Okay.
historical club. But if there is a player that I would say I look up to, I would have to say it was Marcelo because he plays my
Oh,
position, outside
great,
back,
it's a great
one of
pick.
the greatest outside backs to ever play the game. His impact on the field and off the field is pretty big. He has a family of his own, so he's laying low right now, enjoying life post football.
Uh,
So, but he's definitely a player that I always looked up to. Um, yeah, it was just Marcelo. I always looked up to Marcelo. You know
okay.
Marcelo is one of the greatest players. So
Diego Bonito, you know what I mean?
yeah,
I'm a
yeah,
big fan. He's a Brazilian, I'm a big
yeah.
fan. That connection there, but we still don't like Real Madrid over here. So,
Uh-huh.
well, going into our next topic, we talked a lot about soccer, and we're bigger than athletes, and everybody has many different boxes they may fit in. We've been discussing something that kind of been new to me. Your vintage game collection. You've been collecting games, and you've just recently started collecting consoles in themselves. Also a dislike over there, but I became a fan. I got a little PlayStation 4 at home, but talk to us about, where the vintage game collection started from. Like, where did it stem from? Why do you feel so, aside from soccer, I feel you're very passionate about that in itself. So where did that stem from?
I think it definitely stems from the love I have for video games. I've always been a big game head. Um, Growing up, I used to play, all the classics from just having an Xbox, an original Xbox, not the 360, the first
Yeah,
Xbox, to the
crazy.
360, to the PS2, to the PS3, and a lot of those games hold memory. A lot of those games hold a lot of memories for me. And, at that point in time, life was great. Life was different back then. I think you can agree on that.
Yeah.
Coming from someone who just bought a Wii, a week or two ago. But nah, it stems from that, honestly, just the nostalgia of it. I'm pretty big on vintage games because I just love that feeling of, playing a vintage game and just it kind of throws me back. It throws me back a little bit to that point in time, that point in my life when I was, playing the game because it just blows my mind just playing that game at this point in time. Like, I'm just like, for example, I bought 2K17 a couple weeks ago, and it was
Yes.
$3. And it just took me back to seventh grade because, when I was in seventh grade, I did everything I could to try to get that game. And then when I finally got my hands on it, I used to do some no good things in terms of just to get some VC on the game. We're not going to dive into those things, but it's just the nostalgia for me, having vintage games, having vintage consoles. One day I want to have a collection. I want to be able to display it. I mean, that's something I'm really passionate in, and that can grow into another aspect of life that who knows, I may be successful in. Video game store, maybe just things like that. And it starts from a
Yeah.
love like this. It starts small, it's just growing. Um, but I would say that's where I get my love for collecting vintage games and consoles. It's just I like to have them. I mean, obviously it'd be cooler if I had like a brother or something here living with me. We'd probably play it all the time. But even then, I'm still cool with just having them. Like I have my PS3 right beside me right here. I actually played it the other day. I was playing Battlefield 4. I hopped on FIFA
Okay.
12. It's just stuff like that, Athletics ties into it as well. Sometimes I'll just log on to FIFA 12 or 11 or I have also 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and so on and so forth. But I just like going back and looking at the rosters and playing a little quick game just to get the feel of it. Play with those players because we're getting older and our generation of players are they're getting ready to
Yeah.
and
Slowly fading away.
they're fading away and the next generation is slow is creeping up. So I say that's just where it stems from though, the nostalgia.
It is. And I feel, nostalgia, I feel is one of the, a big human trait, a big human emotion. And nostalgia carries us deep through a lot of things. But you kind of tapped into it to my next question. If you had to make this difficult choice, would you start focusing on your vintage game collection, or would you focus on soccer? If you had to make that choice, you're walking a path and it's a left or right. Which path are you going to take? If you had to choose, gratefully, you don't have to choose, and you're able to do both. But in a different universe, where would you go?
Um, I'd stop before I obviously I'd stop before choosing left or right. I kind of want to look at the conditions of choosing a path. Like the game of life, you have to choose your path. So like
Yeah.
you can somewhat see the terms and conditions of the path that you decide to choose. So I would honestly just have to look at the terms and conditions just in terms of like the success aspect or like the success probability, people that succeed in, this choice or the other choice, just that things like that, statistics like that. So I have to look into
Okay.
that a little bit before, but if I had to choose, excuse me, if I had to choose, I'm choosing footy
Okay.
1000% of the time,
Yeah,
whether
you know.
and that can be player, professional, coaching at a professional level, coaching a D1, D2. I mean, it's not just limited to one thing. So it's definitely
Yeah.
foot 1000% of the time. You know that.
Okay.
But I would have to choose that, yeah.
I mean, I like how you said that you would like to look at the terms and conditions. You know, something, that I struggle with in, decision making and wanted to know what am I getting into? But I mean, that's kind of why we're here, looking at those things and these questions that everybody tends to ask because, in this game of life, as you said, you don't know what you're always going to get into. You can have a few, you know, good ideas of what's going to happen. Like, if you kept playing soccer, okay, this can happen. Or if focus on the vintage game collection, this can happen. But ultimately, anything can happen down each path. Like, even if you walk down the soccer path, it might end up leading you back into the vintage path. So that's
Hmm.
just the game of life, and that's just what we're playing. And you never know what, today's going to bring. That's why you should be where your feet are. All
Yeah.
right, you tapped into 2K17, a very monumental 2K, some people's favorite 2K of all time. What is your favorite game of all time? You can tag memories and all, but if that's like a game like what is it, Skylanders? Okay, like me, Skylanders, I would say is a top five game of all time strictly because of the memories I have with my dad. You know, getting out of school, he getting off work, and I'm right there in the living room playing. So that's why included memories. But like 2K17, you have memories, maybe not some fun. It's 2K, but what's your favorite game? You can tag memories and all, but if you have two different we'd love to hear that as well.
Um, Number one favorite game of all time would probably have to be, and it's funny how fast you made that choice because obviously you and your dad played it. Oof, that's a good one. I'm gonna probably have to stick with 2K17 because
Okay. 2K17.
I have to stick with that one only because the memories that come with it's just limitless. Like I can go on first and foremost starting with just at that point in time, life wasn't so great for, me and my mom, and we had to move out of the house we were living in. Nothing bad, obviously, just financial. We just had to move out. And we moved in with one of her friends, and her friends had a son named CJ. So shout out CJ. And
Shout out CJ.
I basically spent my all of seventh grade year, all of eighth grade year with CJ, and the memories that I have with CJ are amazing. Getting off the bus, coming home, and CJ would come home. He went to Highland Springs. I went to John Rolfe Middle School, not in seventh grade. That was eighth grade, but my seventh grade year, I went to Manchester Middle, and then I unfortunately had to move schools. Um, was it my seventh or eighth grade year? I lied. Maybe it was my eighth grade year, but just my seventh grade year, I was at Manchester. I apologize. So that's my seventh grade year.
All right.
I attended Manchester Middle, but I was living in Henrico. I'm gonna be transparent. I lived in Henrico, but I was going to Chesterfield County School, so that's why I lived with CJ. So just coming home from being in school all day, my mom works in Henrico, so I'd have to wait like maybe 40 minutes to an hour every day after school. I'd sit in front of at the entrance of the school, just waiting for my mom. And some days it was an hour 30. I don't think it ever went to 2 hours, but I would have to wait a long time. So I would just walk around the school, maybe go play basketball. But when I got back to the house, CJ would be there. He'd get off the bus from the Springs, and he was going to I forget what middle school he was going to at the time, but
Fairfield. I'm familiar.
he might have been
You
going
know I'm
Fairfield. Yeah,
familiar.
I think so.
If he
But
was Alice Springs, he went to Fairfield. I'm
it might have
familiar.
been Fairfield. He would come home and we would just start playing 2K17. I'm talking as soon as he got walked the door, I would say something along the lines of, "Hey, you suck," or something to provoke him to say, "All right, let's play." The amount of games that we played, the amount of times he beat me, because obviously back then I was only what 12, 13 years old, and the skill gap was kind of crazy. There were some games that I did win, but it definitely was those memories hold a special place in my heart just because of the time I was, life was being life at that time. But
Yeah.
2K17 definitely just throws me back, And then when I finally moved into the house that, you went to, my, I think it was it was in the beginning of my eighth grade year. I finally moved into, the house that obviously, like I said, you have been to, the one that I used to live in.
Mikasa.
Yeah, so that once I finally got established at the house, 2K17 was still popping, and that's when I started to get more into the park scene there.
Just
Beforehand,
about to ask you that.
I was just playing quick games. Me and CJ would play quick games all the time, and if y'all wonder what team he would use, he used the Warriors and I used the Heat. I'm a Miami Heat fan, so I stuck with the Heat
Warriors.
no matter what. But that Warriors team that he used all the time, I hated it because KD, Steph, Clay, Dre,
Yeah.
Pachulia,
Arguably the greatest team of all time, man.
McGee.
And
So
LeBron beat them, but we don't have to
yeah, he
dive into
did.
that. We
That
don't have to
team,
dive.
that dynasty team right there. But yeah, I would have to again. 2K17 holds a special place in my
Okay.
heart, and yeah.
I was just gonna ask you if you played any park. I'm not really much of a quick match player myself. I'm all for the player control modes and whatever we play. So, do you remember your build by any chance? And if
I
you were any good? Everybody says they were
um
good, but we'll
um
we'll let whoever played with you
I'm not
determine
I'm
that.
not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie for the cat for the pop for y'all right now. I'm not gonna lie. I had a sharpshooter. He was eight.
Okay,
He
hey,
was he was
a sharp.
87 overall. His outfit was a Miami Heat cap, a Miami Heat hoodie,
Remember the
and
outfit.
I do, and the Miami Heat shorts, and I think I forget what Jordans I had, but they were red and black. If
Okay, it could be the flu games. I don't remember the shoe game in 23, but I mean 2017, but it could be the flu games.
I
But
don't know,
2K17 was a fantastic 2K. I was a
yeah,
big
it was.
fan. I had me a few player builds myself, and arguably the greatest feature, orange juice. But
Ooh,
orange juice is one of the greatest features.
I think yeah, I agree, man. It was. That was a time to. It was a time for gaming, man. People think
It
2K17. I think it's
was
underrated, but if you're a real 2K player, 2K17 was probably not the if it wasn't top, it was probably the best 2K to ever be released.
the only downside of that game. A lot of people gonna feel me on this one. The Paul George screen. Oh my goodness, the
Oh,
Paul George screen. We, you know what? We're gonna forget all about the Paul George screen because this talking about it is giving me PTSD of just staring at your screen for 20 plus minutes and you're still loading.
you had
But
you remember you had to go through that little save data corruption process.
oh my goodness, that
Yeah, you
all
remember
of that
that?
man. And 2K was still good at that moment.
It
Hopefully,
was.
Ronnie, Mike, if y'all ever watch this, please, bring us back. I would love to start playing 2K again. But going into your junior year, new school, you
Mhm.
have to pick a new number. That jersey number is coming up. You have a lot of jerseys up there with a wide variety of numbers. I've known you to wear a wide variety of numbers. Coach hands you the number sheet. Obviously, some numbers might be taken, but he hands you the number sheet. Jordan, what number are you picking? What are you going with? And why, if you have a story behind it?
I mean, there's a story behind. I feel like every athlete has their own story about what number they wear. You have your story about your 21, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
hey,
I know the
21 is a
story.
part of me now.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
a
part
part
of
of
me
you
now.
now. So obviously, I've worn, a lot of numbers throughout my career. My freshman year, I wore 19, and then my sophomore year, I had the great honor and pleasure of wearing 8. Shout out JC
Oof.
Jordy, man. Shout out JC Jordy. He passed me down to 8.
Excuse me.
That's his number over there at Penn Ken. That's his number. But he passed me he passed it down. And this year I was unfortunately unable to play. But if I did play this year, and obviously I'm gonna play in the fall, I'm gonna go with 4. 4 is the new number.
4. Okay. I do remember the 4 days.
4 is
Okay,
the
he's
new
going.
number. I
Okay.
have I have to go with 4 just because it's just a fresh start. I've never worn four, and again, like you said, it's a new school, new beginnings, and I think I'm gonna stick with four for the rest of my, foreseeable playing career.
Okay.
It's a start for me. Obviously, I have some peers and loved ones that like number four, and obviously, the person closest to me, my special someone, they also take a lot of
Corazon.
accountability for wearing four and having four, and it means a lot to her as well. So I think four is just a good number in general. A lot
Okay.
of iconic players wore four. If I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to think who wore the four. Rafael Marquez, I think he might have worn the four. I might be wrong. I might be wrong, but just four is just a new beginning number for me. Of course I wanted to continue wearing number eight. That was my plan at St. Andrews to continue wearing eight, but just because of just the whole situation with the clothing and just everything that's gone on in my life, four is gonna be it because again, it means it represents a new beginning for me. That number will hold a special place in my heart moving forward. So
Yeah, I do remember we've had a lot of conversations, and I don't even remember if you remember, but you've always looked to pick a number, and four has always been there. Like you've always been, oh, maybe I should get four. You never chosen it, so
I'm
I'm
closing it.
beyond happy that you've
Yeah, just
decided on that number, and hopefully
yeah,
I see come August I get a text message with that jersey, and let's go put a smile on my face. So
yeah. So
um. What is this is a popular question in life. I've experienced this question 5 times in a matter of 26 hours one day. What,
mhm.
and you can keep it as brief as you want. What would success look like for you? And what do you feel like if you had to choose 3 things to say success looks like for you, what would those 3 things be?
It's a good question. I think the first thing would probably be taking care of my parents, taking care of my mom, grandma, grandpa, taking off the workload that they've had for the past 20 years of my life and trying to take, and
Okay.
they're going to continue to have it, obviously because we're still young, but I think that's number one for me is being able to take that workload off of them, say, hey mom, you don't have to work as much anymore. I'll take care of you. I got you. Whatever you need, you just let me know. And the same thing goes for
Yeah,
my grandpa
feel that.
and my auntie and my uncle because behind the scenes they help me out a lot, and it would mean that's my goal. I think everyone's driven by that goal to just take care of their peers and stuff because they
Yeah,
busted their butts working hard, working night and day, to make sure we move forward and we succeed in what we're doing. So I think that's number one, and number two would probably be taking care of myself, obviously. Being able to come home, sit down, and do the things that I love to do and like to do. If I want to take a vacation, if I want to take a week off, I take the week off.
yeah,
That ties into the financial aspect of life. So I'll touch upon it a little bit. Just the being able to have a life where I'm financially stable. I think that should be in everyone's top three, in my opinion. You want to always be financially.
yeah,
So I think that's another goal. If I'm able, in the next 5 to 10 years, if I'm able to sit down and take a breath and be like, dang, I'm financially stable. I could do this if I want to. I could waste, this money if I want to do something, if I want to buy something. I'll be like, I feel accomplished because that to
yeah,
me is something that I've never been able to experience. And even now I'm blessed with a nice apartment, nice room, nice, things like that. I still have to work hard for everything I get. All this
yep,
stuff I have in my room, this PC that I have, I've worked for it and I've busted my butt working for it. And I'm not saying I don't want to work hard or bust my butt, but just being able to do that, but have a little extra just to live life comfortably. I think like, that'll be big for me. Again, it's something I've never been able to experience. My mom's never been able to experience that either. So that ties in that, you see the connection between number one and number two. It's just, a big connection for me. So, but yeah, it would be my number two. And
okay,
my number three would be still having footy in my life.
okay.
Still,
That's
still
fantastic.
applying, still applying things that I took from on the pitch, to my life off the pitch. And, having some sort of job within the world of footy. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave it. Even after
Okay.
I stop playing, I don't want to leave it. So I think those are my top three things those are my top, that's definitely my top three. If I'm able to if I succeed in all three of those things, then, you know, I'm, I'm good. I'm good in life. I'll sit down and say, you know what? I'm good. My life has been a success. I am where I wanted to be. I did what I said I was going to do. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. And it's getting real late. Now I don't want to hold you up too much, so we're gonna leave you with one last question. If you had to say your biggest takeaway from your entire story up to today, what is today? June 24th, 9:40. When you had one thing to take away from your entire story up to this point, going into, the next day in this next chapter, what would you say that one thing would be?
Hmm. It'd probably be take it a day at a time.
Okay. That's a good one. That's a powerful one.
Just take it a day at a time, not everything's gonna happen overnight. I think a lot of people lack patience in a lot of aspects of their life. Even now I still lack patience in some aspects of life, but I'm still learning and growing as a young man. I'm still learning, to have patience and more the things that come with having patience. But I think that's the big one for me. I think that's what I tell anybody that asks for advice about life, or how would you, what would you take out? It's just patience. Take it a day at a time, and things will happen. Let time do its thing. That's the beauty of
Okay.
life. The beauty of life is experiencing the unexpected and experiencing growth. And if you allow yourself to grow and live in the present day things that go on in your life, life will be so much more easier. Because if you just live life impatient, trying to rush things, just overthinking it, it's definitely not going to go well for you. It's unhealthy. So you just want to live life,
Yeah.
take life, a day at a time. It's just like walking. You take a step and you gotta walk before you run. So I think that's what I would say. It's just take it slow, not too slow, but just naturally slow, if that makes sense. Just flow with life, just flow with it. And that's what I would say.
That's powerful. One of my favorite sayings, be where your feet are. But well, Jordan, we thank you. Thank you for being on the very first episode of, Unpack Jose, figuring out things that, people have never really talked about and never had the opportunity. This is a very special episode, and I'm glad, somebody that's very important in my life, could be a part of this very special moment with me. So thank you, Jordan, for being a part of this.
Yeah, bro. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for having me. Again, I'm very, very appreciative that you were able to take the time out of your day, to allow me to come on your podcast. First episode, so congratulations. I'm
Thank
proud
you.
of you.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of you. I want you to know that I'm proud of you. And this is the start of something big. And whoever's watching, give them a follow, all of the above, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Thank you. And big shout out to everybody that tuned in. Be on the lookout for the next segment of Unpack was the You Good pod. For a lot of people, the Hosman podcast will be returning for the very first episode of the You Good pod, a fan favorite. So please be there, and we'll see you soon. Thank y'all for watching.